I head up, thank you, Shannon, again. I serve two hats at CBRE. I serve as the Chief Digital and Technology Officer for the advisory services, and I also serve as the Global Chief Marketing Technology Officer across all of CBRE. So, first and foremost thing today, as I was thinking about this topic, I said, why me? Why should I be the person? What right do I have to stand on this stage and talk to you about digital tech and AI? Well, it turns out, if quick introduction about me, over the course of the past 20 years, I've had the opportunity to build large-scale advertising systems using, AI, ML, if you will, at Microsoft. This is going back 15, 18 years ago. At Travelocity, when it was under private equity or Silver Lake and TPG, ownership of Silver Lake and TPG, I came in to turn that company around, again, through a focus on integrating 5 different technology platforms that were across North America, Mexico, South America, EMEA, and India. So we integrated those 5 different tech stacks and then used AI and ML for search and personalization on Travelocity.com globally. And we were able to run experiments at scale and speed that turned the company around with a 40 percentage point growth within 1 year, and we sold it to Expedia within 2 years at a premium. And then at Oracle, I helped turn around the division for data and analytics, as well as launch Oracle's first adaptive intelligence or AI solutions product suite, if you will. And then at CBRE today, I lead the digital and technology for advisory services, where again, we're looking at the opportunity for client outcomes using data as a foundation and really pragmatically, strategically driven AI use cases. So this is not our first thing with AI, right? AI has been around for a while, and there are many categories that have been successful with AI. I'll just talk about these 4 quickly. You've got financial services, retail, and consumer packaged goods. You've got healthcare and pharma. And there's a lot more, but I picked these 4 because they generally are the ones you've heard about the most. So when we think about these opportunities that have already been leveraged for these industries, the natural question for everyone sitting here is, hey, this is not a conference about one of these 4. So what is the opportunity for real estate, right? What does that really opportunity space look like? And that's something I'll be talking about today. A, what is that opportunity space? And B, how do we really go about that opportunity space? So the number is not a trivial one. So there's a McKinsey conducted a study of the opportunity for generative AI across many different industries. And for real estate, they found that the opportunity was between 110 billion to 180 billion. That represents about 1% to 1.7% of the industry's revenue globally. Now, if you think that doesn't seem large enough, it's 1 and 1.7%, just note that the highest percentage was in banking, and that was about 4%, right? And other industries that I showed on the previous slide, like retail and others, were also somewhere along that range, if you will, of 1 to 2%, if you will. So then the question is, okay, great. We've got a huge opportunity here. So how do we really go about this? What are those 4 key pillars, if you will, in commercial real estate that we really look at? So within the commercial real estate, the 4 opportunities I look at: invest, build, lease, and operate, right? So these are the 4 macro categories, if you will, in which we can really look at the opportunities for AI application in commercial real estate. Let's talk about a couple of them, right? So within invest, in the past, when you've looked at the ability to look at a property valuation or the ability to invest, people have generally looked at siloed data analysis, bringing together different sets of data, trying to analyze them, then looking at macro research reports, and then basically consolidating or filtering down to a few set of properties, and then going out there and doing additional research on those properties to make their final investment decisions. Now, with generative AI, you can take all those macro research, the knowledge that's embedded in your documents, such as leases, rent rolls, operating statements, and be able to query them and then match them potentially with a AI, not generative AI, analytical AI, if you will, that is stack ranking these properties on a set of criteria. And when you match the 2 together, it's a much faster process to be able to use generative AI for investment management. Similarly, in operating, you've got smart facilities management, where AI is already helping from an energy management perspective, but then you take generative AI and the opportunities really explode in terms of the application of AI. Great. So, and in addition, you've got these horizontals that cut across, which is document abstraction, document abstraction, content creation, as well as the structured query. Now, this last one, just FYI, is a little bit earlier in the process, where we're talking about basically taking natural language querying, converting that into a SQL, and using that to extract structured data from data warehouses and data stores. So very early in its infancy. So all of this sounds great, but I do think that we're kind of limited in how we're thinking about our personas with regards to the opportunity space that really exists for commercial real estate. So typically we think about these three personas. Hey, we've got a property investment savant who's using AI, the example that I talked about, or we've got the ultimate broker assistant who can really look through the lease documents and look through data, external as well as proprietary. And then we've got the ultimate Uber facilities and property manager who's omnipresent and is ever knowing. But when we look at these personas in the past, it limits us in terms of how AI can really help us, because there are things that we miss when we take the age-old typical persona. Take the example, right? Let's make this gap tangible with an example. Sustainability. Sustainability cuts across all of them, right? So if you think about it, 40% of global emissions come from real estate, and about half of them come from commercial real estate. And if you look at generative AI with data centers, that's only going to grow. The energy use is going to grow, and therefore the emissions are going to grow. So how exactly can we help as we think about these personas? And this has implications, if you will, across, if you think about the four pillars that I talked about. Investing. This has implications about how you build from a sustainable materials perspective. This has implications about how you lease and how you operate. All of them. Yet, this is an area that we cannot think about within our current construct as we think about the persona today. So we have to fundamentally rethink those personas. And not only is the fact that you've got this 40% and growing, if you will, emissions, you've got the complexity, if you will, of sustainability, of ever-changing regulations. By the way, this is a very small portion of all the different things that are complex, ever-changing regulations that really, one of our clients actually reported that they spend 70% of their time, January through September, just keeping up with the needs for sustainability. 70% of their time is spent on that. So the question is, all of this is okay. You've talked about these four pillars. You've talked about sustainability. You've talked about rethinking. So how do we really go about doing this? What's the model? And again, if you remember at the beginning of this, I had said, what gives me the right to stand up here is because there is a model that I've built over a period of time, as well as the model that we use at CBRE, kind of fusing those two together to really think about how we go about and attack this problem, right? So we've got another 12 minutes here. I won't be able to tell you all the silver bullets here. I won't be able to give you the details here. So I'll talk high level. There's about a 5-step framework. And within each framework, there's, I think, about 3 key areas that I think about, right? So I won't be able to go through all 15 of these. I'll try. But I'll focus on a couple that I believe are more important and different way of thinking about each one of those steps. But I'm happy to engage later on. I'm happy to answer questions later on, if you will, whether we have time here or later on, during the sessions, and to talk about if there's any particular bullet point or area that you want to talk about. So let's get started. What do we mean by how? This 5-step framework. So first and foremost, how do you really think about that strategic disruption? Now, this isn't a buzzword. Strategic disruption is actually, as you will see, is composed of 2 things: strategic alignment and how are you disruptive in your organizational construct, right? Or how you think about the problem. For example, as I said, sustainability. Data being a critical foundation of that strategic disruption. I don't know how many of you have seen the latest news that came out a couple of days ago that generative AI companies have actually run out of data. They've quote unquote mined the entire internet, and they've run out of data to train their models, because they want to train these models on really large volumes of data. And now they're looking at what exactly can we do, right? So they're looking at synthetic data, right? And OpenAI is working on opportunities for synthetic data that can actually use to be trained large-scale models, right? So how do you really get around those problems, right? So, and how critical is data as a foundation? The third piece is, with a focus on time to value, how do you think about build, buy, and partner, right? Because you're not going to be able to, at least we're not in the business of building infrastructure for AI. That's our belief at CBRE, right? We apply AI, we use AI for the sake of, and there's some IP that we build, but we're not in the building, we're not in the same business as Microsoft is, right? The fourth thing is, what's the structured program in which you really go about and utilize that structured program to launch, nurture, and build these AI solutions such that they are truly value driving. There was a question to Cecilia earlier about ROI, and that's exactly right. How do you really think about the ROI, right? And the fifth is, how do you give yourself the space to define the future? Okay, so let's go through each one of them. So first and foremost, strategic disruption. As you step back and you think about it, what are these use cases that are strategically aligned to value chain delivery? So you step back, because each one of you can be in different parts of real estate, right? So you step back and say, what part of that value chain do I have the strength in delivering? What part of the value chain am I the right company or the right person to be able to really make a claim for and succeed? And that is very critical. And that is, even today at the early stages, we believe that we can go cut across into each and everything. You have to look at that value chain and where do you fit in that value chain, and where exactly can you make that quote unquote unfair advantage for yourself, right? But along with that, you think about the disruption in construct and execution. What I mean by that is, as you're trying to energize the AI adoption and the AI delivery, do you really think about a separate AI team? Do you think about your organizational construct that can really speed and accelerate that? Do you really think about a separate AI team, or you think about infusing AI and data and machine learning and models into each one of your teams, lines of business, if you will? And so that, the best way, my suggestion would be to take a look, set up a separate nimble team that really focuses on AI, and let them loose. Let them run with the model, let them fail fast, let them learn fast, if you will. And that is not something that we are used to. So that's a little bit of a disruptive, if you will, organizational construct that in the past we have not been used to. Data as a foundation, right? This is no surprise. The data has to be original. So it's a combination of third-party data, but then you have to really think about your proprietary data. What is that unique, explanatory, and connected data? How do you really get that? How do you really bring it together? And how do you allow building a data foundation, a data structure, a data governance framework, if you will, around it, so you have high-quality data? And by the way, generally when we think about data, we miss two things. One is the data from last mile that I'll talk about, but the other piece is, today for AI, it's not just the data as in the data that's in your warehouse, but you also need to start thinking about a prompt library. A prompt library that you really bring in and put some governance around it and put some mechanisms around it, so that if one part of your engineering organization or one part of your organization is really building those prompts, the others, there's a, call it an enterprise architecture process, such that the other parts of the organization can use those prompts as well. And you'll find that as you do this, the value of that prompt library actually lets 1,000 flowers blossom, if you will. And so don't think about data just in your typical data as we've been thinking about in the past. Think about the prompts that go with the data. The second piece that I wanted to talk about was data from last mile. And what I mean by that is, let's not think about just the data that, let's say, I'm collecting through a leasing transaction or a property management transaction. Think about the data that when people are using these applications, what are they doing? Because that can also inform you in terms of the value potential possible within, in terms of how you can build these AI systems and the value that you can get from it. So how exactly are people using? What selections are they choosing or not choosing? And when they chose a particular selection, did they continue to go ahead with it or not? And that is generally lost. So think about that data from last mile. I talked about the build, buy, partner, if you will. Naturally, we partner with the leading tech providers across the world. But I would also say, take a look at those that have real estate context, because what matters most is whether that particular organization has a real estate context or not. So bring the two together, marry the two together, and that creates a lot of value. The reason I put this one, the expectations in green, is there is no silver bullet. There is nothing that you will simply deploy an AI model and overnight it will give you success, especially in generative AI. You're going to get frustrated with some of these prompts and some of these models that you build. But the key goal is keep moving, keep learning fast. And then the second thing I'd also say is the speed at which the technology is moving outside may be broader from a platform perspective. So don't just look for external providers all the time. Do a blend between the build and partner and buy, right? The fourth thing I talked about was the structured program. This is really the couple of things here, the three-legged stool in terms of the tech, sales, and customer. That's your product mindset. And what happens is when we think back, when we step back and we really want to deploy AI, we want to rush out of the gates really fast without really stepping back and saying, what are those use cases? And those use cases are the ones that are going to define the ROI that somebody asked, again, on the question in the previous one. What is really that ROI? And how can the engineering team really deliver on that ROI? At what pace, at what speed, and at what scope can they deliver it? And the third thing is design, right? So as you think about your customers, are you going to present AI in the same construct, the same UI construct that you have in the past, or will you be able to give them a completely different construct? We talked about the broker assistant a few minutes ago. Will brokers continue to use the same construct of data access that they have in the past, or should we fundamentally think about a different design altogether for that construct, for that use, for that access? And so it's important to think about that product, and design components. Governance and compliance should not come as a surprise, right? When you think about AI, you have to be careful about the exposure with regards to the security, both from a cybersecurity perspective as well as your data security perspective. So it's important that you have a proper governance and compliance where legal is engaged as part of the process, right? A lot of us have let's be candid, a lot of us have a love-hate relationship with legal, right? But I do fundamentally believe that we need them, and we need them even more so as we think about the exposure that AI creates for our organizations, right? And then the last one is define the future. And as I told you at the beginning, I had such a kind of, I don't know if the word is capstone towards the end, like to wrap up this presentation, the wrapper and the edge. And unfortunately, that didn't come across. What do I mean by that? Define the future, wrapper and edge. Sounds really cool, right? Every presentation should have at least one cool thing to talk about, right? That you take home with you. And what I mean by wrapper and the edge is we think in those silos, in those pillars, but you got to step back and say, is there something that wraps this entire thing? Is there something that goes across all of them? For example, sustainability is that wrapper, as one example, if you will. And then the second thing is there something at the edge that can really change the whole opportunity space for me, for my organization? Think about appraisers. When they're out in the field, they're at the edge. They're using the information, these applications at the edge. What can you do for them using AI that can fundamentally change the game for them, make it easier for them? So that's what I talk about is when you think about your silos, step back and say, is there a wrapper? And am I missing the edge, right? And that will really help you kind of rethink the way. I already talked about the new experiences, right? How do you really deliver new experiences, new operating models, new design patterns, new design paradigms, if you will, right? That can fundamentally change how we think about accessing this data, and how do you get insights from the data that's been sitting in your systems. And last but not the least is the talent strategy. I came to CBRE very candidly with no experience in commercial real estate. I had zero experience in commercial real estate, but in the course of the last year, the team and I have been able to make a lot of things happen. Some I can talk about and some I cannot, right? But the fundamentals matter. The fundamentals that, I had applied AI, I had built AI solutions, I had built AI products, so I knew what was going to be the key building blocks, in terms of the data, the design, the product thinking, if you will, really the focus on the customer, the workflow at the end, and really knowing that there is an element of learn fast and fail fast, take your pick, if you will, that really one has to go through the journey. So as you think about your talent strategy, step back and say, what exactly are those fundamentals that I need in order to really define the future? So kind of to recap, if you will, those five pillars, if you will, strategic disruption, what's the disruptive in organizational construct and execution, the unique, connected, and last mile, the build, buy, and partner, think about those partnerships in real estate context, the structured compliance and governance, hug your legal team again, and then defining the future, think about the wrapper as well as those edge use cases. So with that, 30 seconds. Thank you very much for taking the time to listen, and if there's any questions I can help answer, glad to.